for the viewers who haven't seen it yet, because, I explained I'm not really a sports person, but when it crosses over into the news lane, I pay attention. And what happened with Tua, Miami Dolphins quarterback, been there for 3 years, he's a star, was last Sunday, a week ago from yesterday, he had an injury in a game in which he was knocked down and he clearly stumbles. We're going to play it. But you can see, it seemed clear to even, my layperson eyes, the guy had a concussion. Virtually everybody was saying that, including most notably Chris in a tweet we'll get to in 1 second. All right, hold on a second. Here's the video of that. No, let's just show the first injury alone. He's getting hit right now for the listening audience. Slams his head.
Gain of 8, and Tua, he's
back
woozy.
Up. Stumble, shakes his head. Tries to run, goes down, crumbles, gets back up.
Matt Milano
messing with his helmet. All right, so what did you see, Chris, in that? What did you glean from that?
Yeah, I saw 5 distinct signs of concussion: grabbing his helmet, taking 2 bad steps when he stood up, the classic shake off the cobwebs, which anyone who's been around sports knows you have a concussion 100% of the time. And then the falling and having to be held up by his teammates. Like, there was no doubt anywhere. And no one should have been surprised if Tua said, well, my back hurt and that's why I fell. Athletes, will sometimes purposefully lie and distract the doctors because they will think they're supposed to rush back out there and put themselves at risk, which they're not. But number 2, they also, it's like asking a drunk driver if they're good to drive. You're not a good judge of your own brain impairment when you've had a brain injury. And so the fact that they floated an alternative story, not the only time the NFL's done that. They did that a couple years ago with Patrick Mahomes when he fell down walking off the field, and they tried to make up some sort of bizarre nerve neck injury that luckily we shot down in the press because I was worried they're going to try to put him back in. But it's a classic thing.
My God, that is just so scary. So you tweeted out before Thursday night's game, because many people were like, there's no way Tua is going to play in Thursday night's game after what was clearly a concussion. And by the way, just for the record, if that was a concussion on last Sunday, how long should he have been kept, in your view, kept out for?
So the NFL sort of created a guideline that you have to be out a minimum of 6 days. So the idea is that, some doctors would say you should be out at least a month because, you can use research brain scans to say your brain's not normal for a month. But the clinical judgment and sort of what everyone's agreed on is that a minimum of 6 days. But part of that's driven by the fact that most games are played 7 days apart. So he should never play in the Thursday game, but in theory, he could have played in the Sunday.
And I guess I should ask you as well, why is it that the second concussion is so scary, right? Like, concussion's bad, but second concussion close to first concussion is in a league of its own.
Correct. So there's 2 things happening with concussions. One is the microscopic brain damage that we're only beginning to realize and we sort of forgot about. And so those sort of add up linearly. But what can make things exponentially worse is there's also chemical and metabolic changes. Basically, you get this massive ionic flux and your neurons are acting abnormally. And it takes your brain, really at least a week or 2 or 3 to sort of right the ship on those neurons, and they're damaged. And so if you have this second crazy neurometabolic cascade of concussion before the first one's resolved, think of it as taking cells that were on their way to recovery and just wiping them out.
So they put Tua back in for the second half in that game 8 days ago. They just, far from taking him out for 6 days, he went right back in and finished the second half. And then there was speculation about whether he would play on Thursday night. And before Thursday night's game, Chris tweeted out, if Tua takes the field tonight, it's a massive step backward for concussion care in the NFL. If he has a second concussion that destroys his season or career, everyone involved will be sued and should lose their jobs, coaches included. We all saw it. Even they must know this isn't right. And as of last look, which was yesterday, that tweet had close to 200,000 likes. It had been retweeted 55,000 times and so on. And then after he got injured on Thursday night, you tweeted, this is a disaster. Pray for Tua, fire the medical staffs and coaches. I predicted this and I hate that I am right, and went on. So let's go to Thursday. They put him back in. And I know you were sort of touching on this earlier, but does one concussion make it more likely that you will be injured? Like you were saying, you speculated they'd be putting him back in just because ratings and Tua and the rivalry. But like, was he at greater risk to get injured a second time?
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't had time to get into this in other interviews, so I appreciate you giving the time. What no one's talked about is the fact that Tua may not have been in the situation to get his head slammed off the turf if he was thinking more clearly or moving faster. Because I've watched that second hit a bunch of times. We're talking about a big old lineman who chased him down. And I feel like I remember that in most cases, Tua saw that coming and he runs right around the guy because he's a way better athlete. But the fact that this guy was able to catch him and then throw him off the ground so hard, it might have been because he just had a concussion and he wasn't as couldn't move as quickly and think as quickly as he would have a week before.
You may not be as sharp mentally and as a result physically as you normally would be. Because it was weird. Like, I swear, you knew. It was like you knew. That tweet is just prescient. And it was like, how did he know? And now you're explaining there are a couple of reasons, because you understand the NFL and what motivates them and what motivates a player and the risks of being concussed in the first place.
Well, I mean, I like to think people are saying I'm Nostradamus, but if you look at the statistics, like basically every quarterback has a 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 chance every week of having a concussion. So they're already rolling the dice there. And I think basically the NFL said, well, look, there's a 90% chance he won't get another concussion and we'll get away with this. And unfortunately, the less likely outcome happened. And why that matters is that outcome really and truly can be life-changing. You can die from second impact syndrome when you have that second hit before your brain's recovered. You can develop permanent concussion symptoms, which I did from a concussion in 2003. I've never been the same, but I'll tell you what, I did not want to have a 15-year headache, and that can really mess with your head. And then there's just the idea that he could just be a worse player afterward because he has so much brain damage. We're paying quarterbacks $50 million a year now, so the amount of money that he could be out if his play is impaired going forward is sort of amazing to think about.
Yeah, you'd think that they would care, if not about him, then about that, save their investment by not letting his head get dinged up again.
Well, they're not paying him that much yet, and that might have something to do with it.
Oh, God. So let's get to Thursday night. He goes back out there, and this is the one that's so disturbing. They're awful. They're both awful, but you can see with your own eyes that his hands do something normal hands cannot do without some override by some deep recess in your brain. No one's hands can do this without an override. And so he gets hit, we'll play it, and his hands go into some weird like convulsion or like weird double jointed sort of frozen motion in front of his helmet. He's sort of looking at them in a very eerie frame. We'll show it.
His ability to make adjustments at halftime.
To a rolling left with the grain, and down he goes. Slung down at his own 48-yard line. Josh Tupu. And,
The hands.
Well, we saw last week, and he went down, he got up, was wobbly. The training staff comes out. And, of course, the last thing the Dolphins wanted to see. I mean, last week it looked for all the world. Everybody thought head injury, concussion, passed the protocol, came back second half, led him to a victory.
And Al Tupo slams him to the ground. I mean, you're thinking about the back, the ankle, but he gets thrown to the ground.
Again, wrenching that back, which was the issue last week.
Yep.
So they work on him. We'll step away.
You can hear Al Michaels repeating the backstory, which is what we were all told. But his hands almost remind me, and this is with respect to those who suffer from these diseases, but someone who has like a neuromusculature disease or a cerebral challenge where sometimes their hands are contorted in a way that doesn't look perfectly natural. That's what his hands look like. It's obviously driven by the brain.
Right. He suffered what's called decorticate posture. So it's different than a fencing posture because his arm wasn't straight out. It was more the idea that it would convulse like this. And it's been interesting talking to scientists this week about it because what they reminded me is this is most often seen in strokes, right? Like when your brain gets damaged from a lack of blood, you'll find somebody often has their arm stuck like this. So he basically had a temporary, his cortex basically went offline. And he had damage to his midbrain at that point. And so you just saw this sort of primitive response to brain injury.
Have you ever had a friend who is naturally talented at things? They just pick up a sport or a hobby or a thing and they immediately become good at it, make it look easy. If you don't have that friend, it's you. and we're all secretly jealous of you. The good news is, no matter who you are, you can make great food look easy with Good Ranchers. They source the highest quality meat in America, and they can prove it. Each piece of meat is from real American farms and hand-cut and trimmed by real American workers. They only source from farms that meet their standards of excellence, which means no antibiotics ever and no added hormones. Good Ranchers is so confident in the quality they sell that they have a 100% satisfaction guarantee on every box they ship to you. Plus, you can use my code MEGAN to get free shipping and $30 off on your first order. This is America's best meat and seafood, sold by some of America's best people. They have won awards like Best Food Subscription, but their mission is still the same, bringing everyone to the table to share in the best of what makes life good. If you want the best, go with Good Ranchers. Visit goodranchers.com/Megan to save on American meat delivered right to your door. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.